Hello, everybody. Thank you, first of all, for being here. I'm very excited that we have such interest in this little project we've been working on. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Christy Shellenbarger. I've been a member at WCC about 17 years. I may not have a background in professional marketing, but I do have a background in WCC specific marketing. About 15 years ago, I was on a team with Susan Gillette and Ann West and Junia Hedberg to update our website. And then in 2017, I was on a team that was led by Jean Ebersole, and we explored all of the social media strategy, and also, again, we're looking at updating the website. So I have been around for a while and have a lot of experience on specific to our church, the marketing function. So with that, I guess we'll get started. This project has been going on for about 2 years, and it was all going great until a couple of weeks ago when my kids started e-learning from home. So I'm going to just start us off with this. This has basically been my life lately. I have 4 kids who are all e-learning from home. So it's been interesting. My productivity since they started going back to school has been compromised. But luckily we got most of this work done before then. Today is really all about the process, what we learned, and because there's so much to learn, and what really formed all of the decisions we made, and how we made our decisions about all the elements that you will be seeing, and we'll go over all those elements next week. I just want to say, first of all, that I'm really, really thankful to have been working on this project. It's been really an awesome experience for me. I was really thankful that the council decided to invest in a marketing strategy. I think it will really help us as a church to grow, and that's the whole goal here. The first thing you should know is who is on this team. So the circles up above here, these are people all in the church you should recognize: Mike Miners, Lisa Cochran, myself, Jane Hewells, Patty Van Cleve, and Jeff Braun. Not pictured, but very much a part of our team while he was our intern, is James Snyder, who was also with us all summer as our summer intern. And then below, these are the pictures of all of the people we are professionals that we have contracted with. So Tim Schrader is doing all of our social media. Small Good is a marketing firm with these 2 women, Malin and Lenora, who did a bunch of all of our creative stuff and our website copy and all of that. And then Simple Machines, these guys are basically all the stuff that the technical support behind all of the numbers and the stuff we don't understand, that how does search engine optimization work, and what are the best practices from social media and all of that. So we'll just know that this is not just my project. This is like a huge team of people, and I've been very, very grateful to be a part of it. It's been a very tight fusion of the lay leadership, the senior pastor, staff, and the professionals. We have just a really great team. So let's go back to July 2019 when we said, oh my gosh, I think we really need to get going on something. This is an actual screenshot. I Googled Progressive Church in Winnetka, and as you can see, we did not show up as an option. As of that point, what did we try? We had done postcards and mailings, banners on the front lawn. We had been updating our website. It wasn't awful. It wasn't out of date or anything. It wasn't the best website out there, but it was fairly competent. We had been doing social media posts. We'd been using word of mouth mostly as our as our marketing. We had also contracted with marketing firms for social media and website development. And we had an uncoordinated annual spend of about $25,000 a year that we weren't all classifying as marketing, but when you add up, okay, the banners costed this, and firm costs were this, et cetera. We were spending as a church about $25,000 a year. And it resulted in what you see here, not showing up in a Google search. So through those processes, what do we learn? Well, we have a really hard time talking about ourselves. We were very inconsistent with our messaging, meaning, you might ask one person about the church and they would say this, and you would ask somebody else about the church and it would say that, and we might have something else written on our website. We learned that our competition isn't entirely who we thought it was. There's a lot of things out there that we compete with for people's time, like Soul Cycle or AYSO Soccer, or things that we didn't necessarily have in our lens. And then we learned comparatively, we were spending way less than other area churches who were growing on marketing efforts. We learned that we have a great product to share. It wasn't like, we're trying to attract people to a church that's failing or is not relevant today. We actually have a great product. And then most importantly, our team developed this kind of shift in momentum. And we said, this is not actually marketing. This is a ministry. What we want to share is a ministry of WCC. It's not just like the nuts and bolts of business marketing. And I think, Jeff, did you want to say something here about this?
Sure. It was good morning, everybody. It was one of those wonderful breakthrough moments that we had many of. And I have, and the group has, the whole team has a high respect for marketing and all that we have continued to learn from and benefit from. And having Lisa on the team as an established professional marketer, top tier marketer, has been hugely helpful for us. So thanks to Lisa for all the gifts that she's brought to us, and our marketing partners in Small Good as well. But marketing kind of wasn't sitting right with the team. We thought, this isn't really marketing. We don't want people to think we're selling something. Certainly they don't want a church to do that. It feels like we're trying to message, and that felt appropriate. You may be familiar with the Message Bible, which is the name of one of the translations of the Bible. And we had this moment where there was this breakthrough, and we thought, we're not just talking about or messaging about our ministry. The messaging itself is ministry. And anything and everything we say and convey, be it via social media, our website, some printed material, is an opportunity for someone to be touched by God's love and by our particular message as a church. And so we realized we are a messaging team. This is messaging ministry, and it's not just talking about our ministry. It is an act of ministry, no less than anything else we do. And it was a really pivotal moment for us as we then moved forward into developing that idea into a ministry that we all can be a part of, because we're all ministers of this message.
So this is just a quick little timeline of things that happened. Back in the fall and winter of 2018, we started evaluating potential marketing firms. We realized we just really could not do this on our own. We needed professional help. And so we established this team. And then in July, the council approved the messaging ministry project, which was an exciting time. And we contracted with Small Good Marketing and Simple Machines Marketing. And then in the fall, we had some of the professional product brought into the leadership presentation at WCC back when we were all together in Tolman, and they started conducting stakeholder interviews of people in the congregation, and we did this workshop about our brand. Then in the winter, the team chose the brand idea, and we developed the identity, the look, and the logo. And then spring hit, which was like, woo, okay, this is like not what we thought we were doing. We were quickly trying to shift. Okay, we have to now take into account COVID response and our digital marketing and our video strategy, which wasn't even in the original scope of the project. And we turned on our social media campaign almost immediately because we just felt the need to immediately start connecting with people digitally. And then this summer, we launched the brand and the website. You hopefully have received materials in your mailbox and online and through our social media. So you've seen sort of the new look and everything that came out. These are all the things that were originally in the scope. I'm not going to read them all to you, but you can see it was a very, very big project. We did a lot of work. And then, you know, we've now since already added to this list because of things that we've needed to add. So this just gives you kind of an idea of the scope. So we're going to start out talking about who is our audience. We did a lot of studying of this. The primary audience for our website is outward facing. It is for potentially engaged people. We are trying to focus on attracting new people. So we've divided this audience into two kind of demographics that we're going after. First being the authentic church seekers. They might call themselves more spiritual than religious. They mostly believe in God, but they have doubts. They see themselves as seekers on a messy, imperfect journey versus somebody who's arrived and has all the answers. They might have grown up in a conservative evangelical church and would now say they're in the process of deconstructing their faith. They're comfortable with ambiguity. In fact, they often distrust anything less. They've almost given up on the church, but they are looking, at least sort of at times, for honest and thoughtful spiritual communities of belonging, kind of a Christianity without the crap. And many among them are just really, really busy. They might have young kids or who might be involved in activities on Sundays, and the church has kind of just seemed irrelevant to the way they live their lives. The next set of the seekers we're trying to attract are called denominational exiles. These are people who have been in a mainline denomination growing up or in the recent past, and they might call themselves progressive Christian, but whether or not they label themselves that way, they do tend to approach the Bible both spiritually and intellectually. They embrace all sexual orientations, affirm the spiritual journeys of those on other faiths. They applaud women in leadership. They believe in justice, racial equality, and putting their faith into action in the world, especially in terms of standing with the most marginalized. They might have been disappointed, hurt, or frustrated by decisions of some of their denominations not to support full LGBTQ inclusion. They also may have been frustrated by the traditional stuck in our ways approaches that they've experienced in many mainline denominational churches. They like the enthusiasm and accessible and relevant feeling they get from a more evangelical megachurch, but they might disagree with their theology. So those are the potentially engaged people we're seeking. Our secondary audience for the website is the currently engaged people. This is where all of you would fall. We've also divided this group into two. The first being enthusiastic reformers. They might be people who are attracted to WCC because of its openness to questions and doubts, inclusivity, and its welcoming, non-judgmental community. These are folks who are newer to the WCC family and see it as a much needed aspect of their family's lives. Some of them are evangelical or those who were burned by churches that were not inclusive and overly focused on personal salvation with a narrow definition of being a Christian. They're happy to find WCC because churches like this aren't always easy to find, but they have concerns about it not growing and changing or being stuck in its old ways. They want to make the world a better place. They have concerns about injustice, exclusion, climate change, racism, and they wish the church in general and WCC in particular could be more of a force for positive change. They want WCC to help them in raising their kids well, inspire, challenge, and support them in their desire to make the world better, as well as in growing spiritually and figuring out how to be a good person and a Christ follower today. Next, we have the concerned pillars. This is me and maybe many of you, hopefully. So these are folks who've been involved in WCC in various ways, some for a very long time. You have friends here. We've raised our families here. We see this as a community of shared values and traditions. And we appreciate the fact that this is a church that's non-denominational, open to questions and doubts, and not one of those pushy, overly prescriptive, conservative churches. We're successful, well-educated people who have spent most of our lives enjoying relative economic stability, and we're grateful for the opportunities that we've been afforded. WC is a place that has helped us find ways to give back, serve, and make more meaning of our lives. We see the lack of new and younger people in WCC as an issue, but we have concerns about changing too much of what's worked for us. And yet, we long for a faith community that challenges us a little, broadens our awareness, and invests in our continued spiritual and social growth. So the marketing we've developed is targeted to those 4 demographics. We are trying to find and attract, through targeted digital media and campaigns, using specific words and really studying what are these people, all these demographics looking for, and how can we best say authentically who we are, but what are the right words to use. So we wouldn't have been doing a good job if we ignored millennials. They are a key demographic audience. So we have some thoughts just in general on millennials. And so churches across denominations are facing a decline in membership, partly because millennials have been giving up on the church in droves. Here's some details. I'm not going to read it all to you, but millennials were born between 1982 and 2004. So why are they leaving? They've lost faith in traditional institutions. They seem most comfortable with unaffiliation or even anti-affiliation. Why are millennials giving up on the church? Well, 35% say the church is irrelevant. It has moral failures of its leaders. 2 out of 10 say they feel God is missing in church. 1 out of 10 senses that legitimate doubt is prohibited, starting at the front door. Millennials are afraid of being associated with churches. They have kind of a bad reputation and or are afraid of being hurt by them. But they are also becoming parents, and parenting has never felt more complex. It feels hard to do and hard to do it well alone. They want to raise healthy, happy kids with values, but they also see how teens and young adults are more depressed, anxious, and lonely than ever, and it really worries them. But then they also wonder if having a church that includes diverse ages and worldviews is even possible. Does that require going to a traditional church and not asking too many questions, or continuing to do church like their parents did? They, for the most part, aren't willing to do that. The risks outweigh the benefits at the moment. Millennials aren't necessarily looking for hip churches, just authentic ones. So that's what we learned about millennials, and something just to keep in mind is a lot of the wording you might read on the website or the social media things that we've put out there are, they're addressing some of those issues. We are making ourselves differentiated from other churches out there by saying certain things in certain ways that might be picked up on differently than how we think and how we feel having been a part of this church. So we also did a competitive audit to see how are other churches branded. This was really interesting. So here's Kenilworth Union. We have a few churches here. They look very similar to us when you looked at our last stuff. This looks a lot like what we have. They had the green. Here's another church. This is First Congregational Church of Wilmette. You can see they're also green. We have Lake Street Church, which was also green. This is in Evanston. Lakeshore Unitarian Society. Here's another one. This is an example of somebody really like using color and consistency well. This is another church. This one I think is in New York City, so not, you know, directly competitive of ours, but you can see like all of their photos have a similar wash and they have a very consistent look and feel. They're a predominantly online church. Here's Gilead Church in Chicago, which is growing. They also have a lot of green going on. And here's an example of one that, I mean, you really get a sense of who they are. They consistently are using some of these colors and themes, a lot of the same wording. And this is what we looked like before this project. So you can see here we have, this was our website. This was our Instagram idea, our Instagram look, our Facebook look, our Twitter. I think this was Twitter. And then this was our YouTube. This was our business card. We had lots of different colors and themes, lots of different kinds of text. We weren't very consistent with our messaging. So what did we learn when we did the competitive audit? Well, we learned that green, aqua, black, and rust are colors that are really out there. Color sends a signal, and our building is filled with cues that are ownable and differentiating. We need to be bold and simple with our typography, and being choiceful with our wording really helps. We decided to take away that we, you know, want to commit to a voice and a color story and an identity and stick to it. We need to have courage of conviction, and we want to share our information and our branded content. Social media. Well, this was something that we learned a lot about. We have a great partner with Tim Schrader. You saw his picture earlier. And we've done a lot of learning about this. But here's just some social media stats and trends. 42% of the world's population uses social media. Breaking that down, 90.4% of millennials, 77.5% of Gen Xers, and 48.2% of baby boomers are all active social media users. The average person spends an average of 2 hours and 22 minutes on social networks and messaging every day. Now that was before COVID. It may be like a lot more now. 366 million new people started using social media in the past year. That's more than 1 million new people joining social media every day. 68% of Americans use Facebook, and Instagram continues to attract a younger audience, with 72% of teens saying they're using that platform. YouTube is the preferred form of social media marketing worldwide. 83% of all consumers prefer it. So this is really an interesting thing that we learned about the journey that somebody might take before they join our church. First, they might recognize in themselves a longing for community, and then start maybe searching for a place where they belong. And then they might connect with WCC. And only here, when they take steps to explore, would they come or join our church, like come in and walk through the front door, or start watching us online. And then they might begin to attend regularly, and then they might commit, like actually joining is way up here. You know, a lot of our marketing in the past has been targeted right here. Come join us. You know, come see what we're all about. Come in our doors. Join us at this point. But what we weren't really doing was necessarily nurturing these few steps. So this is a lot of what we can do through social media and with our website to make sure that we move people along so that they do feel comfortable taking some of these steps. Jeff's been working a lot with our social media professionals, and so I think he's going to take over here and talk a little bit about sort of the different roles our social media can play. Jeff?
Sure. So I by no means am presenting myself as a social media expert. I know traditional media, social media is not my point of expertise, but it's something we're learning a lot about, and we have great partners in this process, both in terms of generating content and understanding strategically and tactically what we need to be, what we can be doing to build off of what we've launched and are presenting through our website, which we're just so excited about and hope you all are excited about too. It's easy to think of social media. We often think of it, we refer to it as social media. It sounds like it's a channel, a thing, and it's very coherent. And that's really not true. It's as differentiated as, if you want to go old school, as print, radio, and TV with traditional media. So there are different channels and different ways those channels are used for different purposes by different audiences. And the channels are often shifting. So one thing will be in vogue, and then it will kind of fall out with a given target audience or demographic cohort. So trying to make sure that we're on the cutting edge through the expertise we get with our partners is allowing us to get our message out in relevant and real-time ways. This is just a page that kind of gives you an example of, or helps to explain how Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you might not think they're exactly the same, but they're really quite different. Facebook, just to look at the motivation of why people use it, is about connection. And that makes sense if you use Facebook or know people who do. Posting pictures, talking about your life, sharing what's going on. Twitter is to be in the know, on the cultural conversation. Very, very real time, very of the moment, and a lot of back and forth across a broad conversational string. You've certainly seen that. Lots of people use Twitter for different reasons. Instagram's to be inspired visually and emotionally. And so we have focused most on Facebook, and we had been doing that before, but now we're going to be integrating the look of our Facebook page to match our website more closely, and Instagram, and we'll be moving to Twitter perhaps down the road. The advice we got was to really focus on the things that we could be best messaging through now and then build into Twitter a little bit later, because that's something you really need to be every day involved with. So Christy, if we could go forward to the next slide, that would be great. And one note before we talk about, actually we can talk about it on this best practices page. So again, we're trying to get up to speed about what we need to do to ensure our social media messaging matches the robustness of our website. Creating content that's inspiring, that feels relevant. Creating content that repurposes things we have already done and we're trying to get out to broader audiences that may not have seen it. Something we've done for spiritual enrichment, something we've done during worship. Great content there can be repurposed and new content can be created. Understanding hashtags, and there's a range of opinion about hashtags, but these basically allow you to get your message out there and be part of a conversation. So anybody searching for something that has that hashtag in it would be able to find your thread in that broader conversation. This isn't just free. You don't just post it. You can also do paid advertising that can help drive more awareness, more engagement, and trying to be very tactical, knowing we don't have an unlimited budget with that is, again, something we're looking at and we're starting to do. We want to engage our congregation too. This isn't just outward looking. This is about engaging our current congregants, who are just as important as anybody we might bring in across the virtual or physical threshold. And trying to figure out ways as well, just going to that last piece, community management. I can't see the last part there because my screen is blocking it. But that's what speaks to this idea of wanting to make sure that we are responsive. Unlike a website, unlike a print ad, unlike something you put out there on a billboard in traditional advertising terms, we want to be responsive. When someone posts a comment or likes something, we're trying to ramp up to that stage where we are actively responding and engaging those people. So it feels like a personal conversation. That's something that really differentiates, as many of you may know, social media from more traditional media, for something that's a little bit more passive like a website. That's where you can really start to make those connections in those earlier stages that Christy was showing you of that progression, when people are testing the waters and wanting to figure out if it's a fit for them. We can go to the next slide, Christy. So this is just, again, trying to give you a sense of how robust the pool is that we can draw from for social media content. Our service, and if you may have noticed, we're reposting little snippets, representative snippets of sermons on Tuesdays, WCC events, current events in the news. We want to engage our faith with the world. Social media is a great way to do that. Pastoral content that just may speak about issues that are broadly related to our day, but may not be specifically tied to a current event. And along the line, the bottom there, you see community news and events, so we can have a more local focus, tying into like-minded leaders, Christian leaders, organizations, or non-Christian organizations, kind of saying, hey, we thought this was really inspiring. We'd like to share it with you. Offering chance to highlight staff, members. We're doing that on Fridays with our sort of church family focus, which focuses on if you're a family of one or a family of 20, we're focusing on different members of our church to create a personal angle there that allows people to get to know who are part of our church, and even church members to get to know each other. And then stories of belonging and community, again, trying to create a sense of cohesion, really focusing again on folks that are testing the waters and trying to figure out what I want to cross the threshold. So social media continues to be a focus, a challenge, and a real opportunity. And we'll be able to share more about that a little bit down the road as well.
Great. So that pretty much concludes what we wanted to present today for the what we've learned piece of it. I will be opening it up now for questions, because I think you have like a bunch of really great team members here that you can have access to all of us. But before I do, I just want to point out that there's totally different content to talk about next week. So we hope that you will tune in next week. And some of the topics for that would be, okay, so given everything we learned, why do we choose this brand, this logo, this website? What's our social, like, what does our social media look like? What's the elevator speech? We'll hear from Lenora Rand of Small Good Marketing, who was our copywriter. She wrote all the copy for our website with massive input from our team. And most importantly is how you can be really a part of this whole new brand and what you can do to make it really your own and to help the church in growth, because that's the whole goal here. So I guess after all of that, does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Christy and Jeff. It might be nice if we could all see one another again. Would that be okay, Christy? Okay, thanks. And then if you need to reference a slide, we could go back to screen sharing. So over to you all for your responses. Questions, thoughts? We've got about 20 minutes or so.
Jeffrey, this is a question actually to a member of our team. And I'm just wondering, I think it might be helpful just very briefly if Lisa, who was 14 plus years Senior Vice President of Marketing at Allstate, certainly knows the marketing game in all its permutations, and has brought it with such nuance and care to us. It's a great gift to our congregation. I was wondering if I could ask Lisa to just speak briefly about, having just made the presentation. Lisa, is there anything else that you'd like to just share about process or about the work we've just summarized coming from your professional angle?
Thank you, Jeff. It's been a wonderful experience working on this team with all these bright, creative, and importantly, very compassionate and passionate folks about Winnetka Congregational Church and what we are today and what we can be and what we can be to more additional people, inviting people in. I think what we did was follow a pretty traditional marketing process. The process is very important, starting with marketing strategic criteria and following the process and trusting the process a lot, reminding ourselves all along the way that we have essentially two target audiences: ourselves, or engaged members, and people who don't know yet about Winnetka Congregational Church. And so I think it's important as we continue this conversation now to remember that really our primary target are people who don't know about Winnetka Congregational Church, or know about it, may have sampled Winnetka Congregational Church, that we'd invite back to try us some more and hopefully join. I see a question from Jane Dowding. Was there an audit of the intellectual content to influence messaging? And thank you for that question. We did not do a scientific audit, Jane, where we would have pulled content and analyzed and applied numbers to it, partly because of time and expense. As you know, Jane, that can be done. And giant corporations sometimes do mathematical audits with and statistical analysis of content. But what we did do is a very, very deep audit that was qualitative of audited intellectual content, not only of other church organizations and spiritual organizations, but we did take a look at intellectual content of what we consider our secondary and tertiary competition, such as book clubs at Starbucks, or Bible groups, and those kinds of things where people are going to get spiritual enrichment, so that we could really understand what the content was across, particularly the competitive content that our primary and secondary target audiences were reacting to.
Hey, Lisa, I see a couple people have asked a similar question about the staffing and the budget issues for this effort. So I wanted to speak a little bit to that. All right, the council has been kind of brought along on this process, and we were very grateful that they approved the initial scope of the project. The budget was presented in full and approved. That was about $70,000. That was mainly used for the, well, it was that big list of all of those items that we saw. And the difference here that maybe we haven't had as much of in the previous initiatives on marketing is really how we've involved the staff and made this project a real collaboration between the lay leadership and the WCC staff. So Jeff's been very, very involved, as well as Patty and Valdek and Dawn, and all of the associate pastors have been brought along. So we've really made sure that the messaging and the brand and everything was really a part of the whole staff model. Does that answer the question, or was there a different aspect of that you wanted me to address?
It's Paul Van Zuden. I was actually more concerned about going forward staffing and budget issues.
Good question. So I will be asking the council to approve next year's budget, which we're finding is, you know, it is expensive to keep up this work, but you know, the bulk of what we've spent so far was to get us to this point, and now it's, you know, kind of how much do we want to grow, because we have to spend to kind of get the word out. Now we have a great word to put out there. We have great stuff. We want to drive traffic to our sites and our social media, and ultimately, you know, to drive people into our community here. But it does cost something to do that. So we're actually working on the budget plan for next year already. And we're getting information. I don't have the exact number, but we're gonna do it as part of the regular WCC budgeting process.
Christy, another question came in from JS.
Mm-hmm.
You may have seen the question. She's asking, how did Spirit flow through this process? Great
question. I'm glad you asked that. So I was like very concerned when we started with, okay, this is a lot of money. We are going to follow the rules of business on marketing, and we are going to get very good people involved in this process who have a lot of knowledge about the business part. And it just was very businessy to begin with. And I think we mentioned that at some point the team, really shifted our focus from, the traditional business marketing tenets and the focus being on, driving traffic and all of that to, actually what we're doing here is not marketing in a sense of like what a business would do, but really sharing the word of God and how our church is can be so impactful in the world. And so it was a really nice team to be a part of. I think we all felt the Spirit moving through everything. And in fact, when we evaluated a lot of different professionals to work with, it was evident. Two of the ones that we ended up with, both Small Good Marketing and Tim Schrader, who's doing our social media, are very churchy people. We love that they have a way of understanding what we're trying to say, and they're not applying traditional business, theories to us. They have made it more of a ministry than just, like, okay, we're going to do these items that are very traditional in marketing, and we're going to follow this. We've thrown some rules out of the window because, hey, we're a church and we don't do things like that. And so it's been really cool to work with partners who get us. They really help us to make sure that the Spirit and that this whole process was God-centered instead of, being, yeah, Lisa, you want to chime in?
Yes. I think it's important to mention that the main outside folks that we worked with, which is this small company called Small Good, these two women are recognized professionals and highly awarded professionals in the advertising and marketing business with whom I have worked for many, many years. And they were formerly at some of the top advertising agency creative firms in the world. And they are two women who knew one another and broke off, most recently broke off from Leo Burnett. I worked with them for at least 10 years and know them very, very well, and knew that they were grounded in all the principles of marketing and advertising, and would make sure that the process, Spirit-guided process, but that the process would encompass everything we needed to make this effective and efficient throughout the process and at the end. Lenora Rand is a minister, and Malin Pollock is also very spiritual, belongs to a church in Wilmette, and they care very much about Winnetka Congregational Church and really our greater purpose and mission. They broke off from large advertising agencies to form their own company called Small Good. And if you ever have a chance at some point later to look at their website, it's called smallgood.com. You will see that their focus is to apply their marketing, advertising, and communication skills to organizations that do good. And so I introduced them. We did go through an entire request for proposal process where we looked at other firms as well. But as Christy said, what these two brought to the table, both in personality and compassion and communication to us, that we just felt intuitively, but also their book or portfolio of work that they're doing for other, including very large firms like the McCormick Tribune Foundation, was quite captivating and really sold us over. So I wanted everyone to know that not only did the Spirit guide us as our team, but the Spirit definitely was guiding are partners as well. And they are definitely part of their team, which is why we invited them to speak with all of you next week. And so you'd have a chance to get to know them as well. They have participated in our worship before COVID and post-COVID. They've been around our church, and they definitely have worked very hard to get an understanding of us.
Lisa and Chris, I just want to add one thing as it pertains to JS's question, which is extremely important. There's not a more definitive and salient question when a church is trying to figure out its messaging, call it marketing, call it messaging, than was the Spirit involved. And I'll just simply say that from the beginning, and this is back to 2017, and then leading on into when we finally engaged with Small Good and Simple Machines, and ultimately with Tim Schrader as well, there was really a sense of the Spirit stirring, a clarifying sense of the Spirit leading, and a sense of the Spirit entering in. And there was a deep, deep, prayerful, palpable intentionality about how we, as a team representing this church, this wonderful congregation with all its history and all its hopes going forward, how we could accurately present and share with our marketing partners, our messaging partners, these outsiders come inside, become insiders, who we are, so they could help us message in a way that was true to who we are and true to who we're being called to become. And that's ever and always the Christian path, who we are now and who we're called to become. And there was a sense of the Spirit in the room. These were prayerful meetings. I wasn't the only one at times who would be moved to tears when we would kind of hit a point where something would be revealed, or we would feel God's guiding hand. And I think that really differentiates this process as much as anything. That feeling, that sense of being led, that sense of the Spirit among us, that sense of our profound care for our congregation, as anything from what might be a traditional business process. So it has all the tenets of great marketing, as Lisa and Christy have said, and yet absolutely guided by the Spirit, palpably at each stage, and still now feels that way.
And of course, we want this to be effective at the end, because there is an investment involved, both a monetary investment and certainly of resources, and a lot of resources. And we want the end product to be evergreen and to continue to pay off, so to speak, in effectiveness in achieving our mission and achieving our objective. And we recognize that the objective will sometimes evolve slightly and go one way or another, especially for a church marketing campaign, for a church marketing ministry. But we want to make sure that all of this work pays off with the maximum effectiveness that it can. And that is reaching all of you and involving all of you, as well as those folks with whom we haven't met yet.
And I also just want to say that we're going to track. Is this working or is this not working? We have metrics. I mean, we're in the process of defining those, but the ultimate metric is, do we grow the congregation or do we not? We've spent a lot of money here, and we want to make sure that we are getting the impact of that. So what we want to do is track. We're already talking about, okay, what are the right words that are resonating? So some of the stuff that we've put out, we'll start to gather data on, and we'll realize that, oh, when we message about this or that, we actually have a lot more traffic. So we'll move things this way or that based on the immediate feedback. And also with, all of our SEO, which is search engine optimization, has been built into literally every single page of our website. So we will be able to track what are the searchable things, what are people searching for, and where do we connect in, and we'll see what has more impact. And this is a very dynamic process. We will be tracking, we will be giving ourselves scorecards and metrics going forward. So it's not just going to be something that, okay, we're done here. This is a very much forward-looking process.
I see some questions about reaching out to folks who don't specifically identify as Christians, but hold Christianity's values. And I answered quickly to Andrea about that. But I think it would be important, Jeff or Christy, to talk a little bit about, and we are definitely going to get to this next week, but for those of you who might not be able to join next week, I think it's very important to communicate now that we have let what's engraved in the stone above the front door of our church guide us through this process as well. So Christy or Jeff, if you want to say something about that.
Sure, absolutely. So that was probably the most definitive phrase. If we looked at a pivot or a hinge that would help us to move from how we've been messaging to how we move forward, what's the consistency? It's that pivot. It's a house of worship for all people. And you'll also see in the website, a very important phrase is both and. There is this ability for two things or multiple things to coincide that might not normally seem like they could fit together, or that in other churches or other maybe even denominations don't fit together, are forced apart. And so the idea that we can be both something A and B at the same time without contradiction is really important. So when we look at who our audiences are out there and what we're trying to say about us, we are a Christian church. We're grounded in Christ. You look at our mission statement, Jesus is specifically mentioned. Our desire is to bring the teachings and the life of Jesus out into the world and to embody that and how we do, everything we do in the world and our church. So we're a Christian church grounded in that identity and yet profoundly open. And often what you look at when you think about some of our target audiences is that people have experienced church as being either or, as being dichotomy, as being judgmental, as being exclusionary. And you can either love Christ or you can love other religions. Well, we don't believe that. We believe that we can be grounded in Christ and utterly open to other faith traditions, to witness to their sacred nature. And we certainly don't want to say that we're not a Christian church. That wouldn't be true to our history. It wouldn't be true to where we are now. It wouldn't be true about where we're going. But there is a profound openness that comes with how we understand Christ's love and teaching. And that's what we're trying to convey. The false dichotomies, the false either-ors, a sense of walls being created where they don't need to be. These are things, as you look back at those demographic groups, both the internal ones and the external ones, that really put people off. And back to the idea of us having a great product, which was that line on one of the first pages, that's not something our church believes, that those have to stand in opposition. We can stand in our identity in Christ as Christians and yet be profoundly open to the world and to other views. Thus our multi-faith mission trips, thus our partnership with Congregation Hakafah, etc. So we want to make sure people are able to reclaim, rename, re-understand who Jesus is, and that he may well not be the judgmental, it's one way or the other way, this way or the highway Jesus that often Christian churches or Christian traditions have presented him to be. So that hopefully creates an open door of engagement, that creates a door for experimentation, for understanding, and shows where we're grounded, and yet shows our profound openness to all the religions of the world. And that, again, I think is consistent with where we've been and true to where we want to go.
I'd like to jump in as somebody's got to be a timekeeper here, so I'm going to play that role. There's actually still one question still awaiting. If any of you have questions that you want to get addressed next week, please make sure that they're sent to me or to Christy, and we'll make sure that they get addressed next week. But we want to leave you wanting more. So you'll come back next week. I want to thank Christy, members of her team, Jeff and Lisa and everybody, and all of you for participating. This has made things so much clearer, even to me, and I've heard these presentations before. So thank you very, very much. Any other announcements before we move on? There is worship at 10 o'clock. We hope that you'll join us for that, as always. Any other questions for the good of the community? You can unmute yourself, and any other things we need to cover before we depart.
Thank you for hosting, Jeffrey.
You're welcome.
Thank you for letting us present in this forum. This was really great.
Good. I'm
Thank
good.
you, Christy.